Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the latest edition of the Quantum Compass. In today's episode, we are going to be looking at a number of things, primarily the incoming wave spell of the White Magnetic Wind, but also the full moon on November the 5th, which is Guy Fawkes Day. We're also going to be looking at the goddess of the harvest, Three Eye Atlas, and the move in the 13 sign sidereal astrology from Virgo to Libra, and quite a bit more. My name is David.
And my name is Bella. Welcome back.
So these are big days. Every day feels epic, and each day leads to another epic day, which then forms a 13-day epic sequence, which we would call a wave spell. And we're just about to complete one. So are we going to have a little look at how this wave spell's been for us, Bella? Draw some conclusions and kind of make the bridge across this wave spell into the next?
Right. So the wave spell we're finishing is the red moon wave spell. And if you have experienced a lot of purification, purging, letting go of many things, getting into self-remembrance, retuning with the cycles, the natural cycles, and the true sky, then this is the process that the red moon was inviting us to do. Anything else as a review?
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday in preparation for today's video, and Bella was asking me this very question, as we always do at the end of a wave spell, like, how has it seemed to you? And all of the things that Bella said have been very true. Yes, some pretty strong purification at some point, but it really felt good afterwards, I have to say. And all of that for me was part of the reflection. Now, there is another glyph in the wave spell, the mirror, that's more seen as the reflection, but the moon is very reflective, particularly of the astral realms, the emotional body. And so there's been a lot of reflection inwards, mostly, looking at the things that needed to be looked at so that we could get to the day of transcendence, the 31st of October, which of course is the fall harvest. Used to be called Samhain and Halloween, but we've now reassigned it to something that feels more uplifting. And that's the end of this wave spell. So we start this next one on the 1st of November until the 13th of November. So yeah, it's felt very, very powerful with the Atlas 3i convergence with the sun, or the conjunction that happened with the sun as well.
And there was a big process of working with the mind. What is the mind? What can we release and let go that is not our mind? So there was a powerful process that happened there. And also we activated the two pillars, the first two out of four pillars. We'll talk more about it during the show.
Yes.
For the Christ consciousness, that part of the activation, the divine will, the divine mind, and divine mercy,
this is a big one,
were part of all of this process. So if you found yourself having to have compassion and mercy towards a process, that was part of this activation of the last few days, or letting go of all ideas and mind patterns that needed to be let go of. So, and now we take the wave spell that takes us into the next two pillars of the Christ consciousness, where we'll talk about divine love and divine law.
Right, so as Bella said, the emphasis on the mind is something we've been discussing a little bit over the last month or so on different videos and in live calls with our tribe. But it's significant because really what it does, once we go into the lower mind and the higher mind, all of which is synonymous, of course, of St. Michael slaying the dragon. There are many stories that basically tell of the taming of the lower mind by what we would call the divine or original mind. But in the process of going into that, certainly to some of us, it had become quite clear that there was some sort of corruption that was going on with the mind, because the mind was linked to the matrix. So there's also been a lot of energy around the new, the original Gaia grid being restored, and how the particle and the wave, the nodal points and the telluric currents, it all sits together. And if we have a faulty grid, then chances are the mind is in accordance with that. So this is where quantum meditations kick in, because once you get to the position of the observer, the eagle's perch, and you can see yourself in these kind of contortions or mind patterns or something, the question then becomes, it's like, well, what's going on there? Maybe I need to have a look at this. And in doing so, many things got revealed, which in some cases could lead to a purification of whatever that was causing all of that, all of which is a very big story for another time. But essentially, I would say, Bella, that the overall prognosis of this wave spell was the ending of that mind control, whether we understand it internally with the egoic logos mind, the lower mind, or with the mind of Gaia being also overlaid and gridded. We can see in a fractal world that it's the same thing. So it feels to me like we went through that process, gearing up with the wave spell before of the warrior, which also had some of that stuff. so we could get to this place now ready to receive just in time for the fall harvest.
Right. And talking about the matrix, I'm going to give a plug to the video with Isaac Rodriguez, where we talked about Ophiuchus being the exit point from the matrix when we talk about astrology, the 13th sign astrology being by us paying attention to the center of the galaxy. That's our exit route of the matrix. So that was a very interesting talk.
Right, yeah, a big shout for that video, and also what it feels like it's bringing through, which is a new way of looking at our way of navigating with time. So less of the old world Western astrology, the new, or at least the original 13 sign sidereal astrology that we've been working with now for a while. Also is a work in progress. It feels like that we're flowing into it, expanding into it. And a lot of the work that Bella's been doing has been looking at how that could fit with previous timelines and epochs flowing forwards, so that we have a fully repaired timeline, both in the future moving forwards, but also of the repair of our time, all of which is kind of interesting when we come to Guido Fawkes in the 5th of November. So we'll get to that later on. But shall we dive into the presentation, Bella?
Yes, let's do that. As usual, we'll start with the Mayan part, the Mayan cosmology, and then we'll go into the astrology. So we'll start here with what it feels like the journey of ascension that has begun. After we had the time convergence, which happened on the 14th, 15th of October, all of the timelines came to a 0 point. And after that spiral came to a 0 point, we're now spiraling out into the new. So that journey of ascension, you could see it as a spiral downwards and another one upward.
Yeah.
We're starting to spiral into the ascension process, which means we'll get activated. The time we're anchoring the new time, making sure that in this new galactic day, a cycle of 13,000 years, we start by making sure we infuse harmonic resonance in what we do. That's why the switching from the 1260 time to the 1320 is so key. Because there are so many universal light codes coming to us. When we go and see at the comets, we have about 4 or 5 comets around us. They're inside the solar system. We had about 17 different ones, but there are 4 or 5 that are around us right now, infusing the energy of the solar system with all of these new codes that we've been waiting for a long time. And this is the moment when all of those things happen. So, part of this process is that path going back to the original innocence or the original blueprints, and having more of a cosmic perspective until we reconnect to our cosmic selves, to knowing we're part of a galaxy, we're part of a universe. We can't tap into all of our multidimensional selves, and that's part of what we're doing. And then we realize that we're part of that great wave of awakening that keeps us in oneness and unity consciousness. That's where we're going. We've always been, but we've been so disconnected from it that the reality we've been creating wasn't serving anybody, just a few people at the top. But now it's time to reconnect to the natural time.
Perhaps we could even liken it to the radio stations, and we were tuning into a station that perhaps wasn't with the most clear signal, and perhaps wasn't at the resonance that was most suited to us. But now we have had the opportunity, and I think have done so, tuned into one that is more suited to us, which feels great.
13, yes. So we're now reuniting. We're in the process of starting the reuniting with the true universal time and the true mind of source or God energy, seeking truth and harmony, attuning to universal order within. When we want to change the world, we need to change it from within. Not if we're still judging or seeing problems outside, we need to go back inside and resolve them inside of ourselves. Because everything that we're doing, the ascension process, the evolutionary process, is a vibrational ascension or evolution or shift. Until we reach those vibrations that are so high, we won't be able to anchor the new earth that we're all wanting to have. So here it is, the evolutionary shift, which has already started. This is definitely a turning point since the convergence on the 14th, 15th of October. Now we start seeing the rest of the systems collapse. And some of those systems that we'll see collapsing very soon are the financial systems, will be able to have biological regeneration. So the medical systems obviously weren't working for people, and they were part of big corporations. But now we're in the process of regaining the power within, the essence to regenerate as we attune as well to those cycles. And we're going from a cycle of distraction, we have entered the cycle of creation. So I think things are going to get exciting from now on, and we're starting to see all of those things happen.
And perhaps some of you have been wondering, when are we going to see the change? Well, if we just use Bella's example and think about the sort of the bottom of the spiral or the eschaton, well, as the spiral starts to shift out, it's probably so close to us that we can't really perceive it, but it does have more kinetic energy. So that first little kind of almost spin out from the center point, the 0 point, might seem a little imperceptible, but I feel that that's not going to last very long, because the as within, so without principle is the evolutionary shift.
Correct. And the bridge, we are the bridge. Is we who make all of this happen, because we hold the keys. As we activate ourselves, as our 13 DNA strands get activated, and we prepare our mind for this shift, things won't start to happen. That's where most of the things we've done, every course was always to make sure that people worked on their shadow, increased their vibrational frequency, and did their multidimensional connections, brought their cosmic avatar selves, aligned the frequency, because all of this process happens through us. Destiny of the human race depends on all of us and our vibration.
So just as a little marker point, because we're going to come back to them later on, this also links, of course, to the motifs of the Crew Constellation, Divine Mercy, and Free Eye Atlas. So just hold all of that, because we're going to keep looping back to these points.
Right. If you're new to the show, we work with Mayan cosmology, sidereal astrology, and lots of archetypes to help us understand more of what's going on and where we're going. And this year, which started on the 26th of July of 2025, is the year called the Resonant Seed Year. 13 moons that are going to help us activate the cosmic seeds that we are. So that potential that we have inside of us, the ideas that are going to be starting to flourish everywhere if we are in coherence and in alignment.
Right.
So we are still in the fourth moon, which is called the self-existing moon. It goes from October 18 to November the 14th. So we're still in this process. And this moon is all to do with form, with measuring things. Where are we going with what we do? This is the totem for this moon, the owl, and it's reminding us to tune into those subtle energies that we don't see, into our psychic abilities, our intuition, so that we can bring all of that more spiritual aspect into harmony with what we're building. Because this is the moment that we start becoming cosmic humans and start the process of rebuilding new Earth. So this is an excellent moon to be able to ask yourself some of those questions, like, what form will my spiritual journey take? Who are you becoming? And if you have a project, an idea, or a dream, what are the blocks that you need to put in place? Start designing and thinking about that. So this moon is also, or this totem is, as I said, helping us see through the dark. There are many things that are going on and many illusions that are now collapsing. The veil has dissolved. And if you set your mind in meditation or reconnect to the planetary mind, you'll get to see how many of the grids of control and artificial time and many of those things are collapsing. You'll see the signs, but you need to tune into it. And also, it's still a good moon to put the intention of what you want to create, because your intention becomes a reality, especially if it's aligned with divine will and the highest good for all.
Right, so there are many correlations we're going to draw throughout this episode. It's been a very illuminating period, right? Particularly coming into this self-existing moon of form. And I know that Bella's going to look at the Crew constellation probably shortly, but it often helps, I think, with the number 4. I sometimes think of it as the 4 dots on the dice, but you can also think of it, and this very much relates to one of our courses, the Heaven on Earth, where we build the inner medicine wheel to the 4 points of the compass. And so those are just little visuals that I've shared often on the shorts, but also find useful to hold working with this self-existing moon of form.
So this is my tone in my galactic signature, the
Mm.
self-existing tone, and it's all to do with creating containers,
Yeah.
creating space that feels safe where you can build something. So whether it is creating a family or creating a company or creating a course or whatever it is, this is the moment to give form.
Yeah, a ceremony space, a healing space, a home space. All of these are containers. And the more that we get into that mindset and work with the idea of containers, the more obvious the self-existing tone becomes. And again, just pointing to chapter 4 in the Navigation Guide to Quantum Consciousness, great deep dive in that. Excellent series that Bella brought together. So recommend that.
So I found an owl constellation
Yeah.
called in Latin Noctua, which means nocturnal. And it is at the tail. If you see here at the bottom, this is the Hydra or water, female water snake. And right at the tail, there is a constellation that is an owl. If you can see here on the left, is clearer. Then here's the crow and the cup. So that constellation is still there. If you pay attention, it's in between Spica and the tail of this hydra. So if you want to connect to this owl, and I think it's so amazing that it's like a bridge between the lower nodes of the female serpent and the higher nodes of what Virgo is, which is like the mother goddess energy.
I also love this part of the constellation because it's very quantum compass. You have those navigational tools, and you have the Argo, the ship, the Ark in many ways, and you have the energy of the sea serpent or the sea dragon and the owl. So there's a lot of archetypes here to work with in a very interesting, exciting way. And I think this is part of what you were looking at with Isaac, is the development into the constellations and the energies as we perceive them, as the ancestors perceive them, is perhaps going to change the nature of the codes, the neutrinos that are coming to us from those stars, but more on that later.
Because we feel a part of the mission with doing Quantum Compass is to get the conversation going with lots of people. Let's redefine the astrology for something that makes sense for many people, not just for a few. Let's review the archetypes. As we are evolving, those archetypes need to evolve as well to higher nodes, things that we can create with a new Earth that is more 5D. So that's it for the moons. It's the fourth moon. Now we go to the 260-day cycle called the sacred round, which is 13 times 20. And the archetype is the white wind. We'll talk a little bit more about the white wind in a minute. We're in the fifth castle. So when you follow this, it's like looking at the four elements. The red one would be the fire, the east, where everything starts. It's a medicine wheel. Then we go to the white castle, which is air, the air elemental. Then we go to the water elemental with the blue, the earth elemental, which is where we had on the 14-15, we had here the harmonic convergence. And we finished that wave spell and immediately jumped to the ether or to the castle of enchantment, the green castle, where we just completed the first wave spell, which was the red moon. And we're now jumping onto the second one, which is the white wind. So we went from a red wave spell to a white wave spell. And we'll talk more about what that means.
So just looping back to what I said, this is an excellent image to kind of bring into your awareness because it's also a square and a circle. Thank you, Bella. And, you know, when you look at it like this, you can understand that, again, using the heaven on earth inner medicine wheels, this is really important because when you have the horizontal plane, all of your inner elements balanced, those are actually the red, yellow, blue, white castles. And then the central channel, which is our fifth elemental channel to the etheric, could actually also correlate in some ways to the alignment and cleansing and hollowness of our central column, because when our inner central column is nice and clear, directly connects us to the etheric world. So this is a beautiful model or map, we can say, of understanding the horizontal and vertical alignments, but also how that's actually mapped out as a structure, at least a sort of a very good foundational structure of our inner quantum technology.
And the 13, you can see the spiral. The spiral represents the 13. If you think about the golden mean ratio and the Fibonacci numbers, 13 is part of this cycle and is embedded in all that has to do with this way of measuring time, like the Mayan cosmology or the Solkin, the sacred round. So we're going into the wave spell that goes from kin 222 to 234. This is the Wind Wavespell. You can see here we only have 39 more days before we finish this very important Solkin. There is only one more Quetzalcoatl day. It's in the last wave spell, I believe. But now what we want to focus on is on this column here from 222 to 234, where the very first day is a galactic activation portal. So the Wi-Fi of the universe is open for us on that first day. Something else?
There's always more with the Zolkin, but not in this moment.
So crazy with the spirals.
I can see
Put them everywhere.
that.
Is the 18th wave spell out of 20. And the qualities connected to this archetype of the white wind is our connection to spirit. For 13 days, we can reconnect to our higher self, open communication to spirit, get inspiration, get downloads, use our breath as the fuel of life, reconnect to the invisible forces of our higher selves, our guides, our companions, reconnect with cosmic energy. And in the body, it represents the respiratory system. And as with everything, every single wave spell, there is a shadow that we can review in these 13 days. And the shadow here is victimhood. Are you still blaming others for what happens to you? Are you still in any space of victimhood? Could be from something from the past or something current or something that happened to your family. Anything that is still keeping you in a place of victimhood needs to be reviewed. It's a great opportunity to do it now and finally let it go. If you're still projecting or blaming others, judging others, if you still have doubts about your connection to divinity, and we get this a lot with the people in the tribe, they doubt their connection to divinity or to spirit, but they go and do amazing things that then obviously show that they have been very plugged in and connected. If you still feel separated or isolated, it's a moment to remember we're never alone. We're always connected to our higher self and to everything, to all that is. And for transformation, one of the first steps, especially with the topic of victimhood, is to take responsibility, to reconnect to the divine. And it takes just the intention, but also to make sure that you're willing to let go what is obstructing that connection. Another way of transforming this energy is to follow your inspirations. What is it that you've been dreaming about, that you want to do, you've been wanting to do for a long time? Reconnect to that desire and inspiration that wants to manifest. I think that's pretty much it. Anything you?
Just a couple of things to add. I like the wind wave spell for a couple of reasons. It's very elemental. It's very, of course, connected to the air elemental. So if you have done Heaven on Earth, you might want to review the air elemental chapter on that, just to really call forth all of those air beings who you can work with. And I think you're going to talk about air cattle probably in a minute. But also just to add to that, the wind, the air elemental is, of course, very connected to Mercury, to Pegasus, a lot about communication, delivery, of course, the air elemental signs in the zodiac. And I think we featured this planet either in the last episode or one just before, very much about communication with the throat chakra, which, of course, in our world is Yarrow, but there are other planets that can help you out. So those are the kind of allies that I'm going to call in for this wave spell and invite others to find their own in a similar fashion.
So I'll just briefly go through this wave spell. The white wind is where you want to define a purpose. What do you want to achieve for this wave spell that is to do with communication? For example, you want to communicate with somebody you haven't for a long time. This would be a good wave spell to do so, or even to your higher self, to write something. Maybe you've been wanting to write a special email or write a book or write I don't know, Substack, whatever you're trying to put together that has to do with communication. This is a perfect wave spell to do so. The obstacle here will come with a blue knight, or the difficulty, the challenge is to be able to go beyond any obstacles or any fears that could keep you stuck. Then the third day, which is the electric seed, is telling you make sure that you bring the energy, all that potential, and put it to the service of others. The 4th day is give form to what you're planning to do here with the energy of the red serpent, which is infused with life force energy, with movement, with activating your Kundalini energy. The 5th day, it's about the world bridger and radiance. So that's going to tell us, make sure that you're bridging to the higher self, the cosmic self, and bridge to the new earth as well.
Right, and actually, very conveniently with this wave spell, the first day of the wave spell is the 1st of November, so it's quite easy to track. Day 1 is the first, day 2 is the second, and so day 5, which is of course the full moon, we'll look at shortly, and November the 5th is that very important world bridging glyph of the radiant tone. So I think that's a really significant day, which we'll get to shortly.
And then with day 6 is the blue hand, anything that needs to be healed in terms of bringing things to balance, maybe in relationships, maybe in the way things are working for you. Bring everything to a point of healing and balance. Day 7, it's the yellow star telling us attune to the energy of the stars, to what's happening out there with the cosmos, with all of the three-eye atlas and everything that is going on, because it's so much. We need to remember this hasn't happened for us, and it's never going to happen again for thousands of years. We won't get to experience this amount of comets at the same time in our space, with the maximum solar flares coming, the maximum solar cycle and the amount of solar flares. We'll never get that amount of support ever again. This is a big evolutionary shift. So we want to be aligned with what is going on in the sky as well. On day 8 is the moon. So the red moon is going to ask us to purify and integrate what we did in the previous wave spell as well. Day 6, 8, 9 is with the white dog. Make sure that your intention is about connecting to the heart and bring lots of compassion into what you do.
So, Bella, and just interestingly, on this particular day, in the context of the wind wave spell, Mercury goes retrograde that day. So, as we're making our final intentions before Mercury does the review, it's on that day. So, it's kind of intriguing. It's like the whole wind communication Mercury piece is wanting us to get very clear on that before.
And that the manifestation of that is make sure that you're loyal and you work with your compassion and bring unconditional love, basically.
So, that the following day.
The day of manifestation is with the blue monkey, which is saying, make sure that day we should have a manifestation of innocence, of play, of being in our hearts, being like children and bringing magic into our lives again. That should be the manifestation of that. And so pay attention to the synchronicities and what happens day to day as you follow the wave spell.
Draw the correspondences. It's why it's good to keep a journal of these things and kind of write all the details down, because sometimes there's so much you don't always see it until you have it all in front of you. It's like, there's the picture I was looking for.
With day 11, we're talking about the human, the spectral human is telling us, make sure you free yourself from any conditioning things, because the rewiring is happening in our vessel, in our chalice, which is our vessel, we're going into becoming cosmic humans. So the rewiring and upgrading of our DNA and our bodies is all happening right now. But we need to make sure we free ourselves from any beliefs or anything that won't let us go through that process of upgrading.
And again, if you think about it, it's beautiful, right? The day of liberation, the spectral tone with the human, it kind of suggests that this could be a good day. It's also a significant day generally, with many other things happening that day. But I feel good about that day incoming.
The whole wave spell.
The whole wave spell.
Really good. It makes me feel that we're definitely going on the spiral going upwards. Then on day 12 is the Skywalker, a day to collaborate, maybe with other people, connect ideas that are more 5D, so that we all bring heaven to earth and create something in collaboration with our communities or the people you want to work with.
Right.
And the final day, the way to transcend this energy is with more magic, with the white wizard or the energy of the jaguar, which is telling us, make sure you use magic. After all of this process, we transcend it with magic and we jump, take flight.
Right, and we sometimes say that the wizard is very much like the jaguar, and the jaguar very much like the owl, actually. There's a lot of correlation here between the cats and this owl moon. But you can be like the cat and work with those psychic abilities to see in the dark, to see what is really real, to see your true self. All of these things kind of link to the liberation of the spectral human, I think.
Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to talk just very briefly here about the white wind. The representation of that symbol, which is like a T, it's the tree, but also the symbolism for wind and the breath. So imagine in those beautiful ancient Mayan buildings, when the wind came or when a storm came, then there is sound that activates and people get tune into the frequency of what's going on through the wind, as if it is the breath of itself, of the universe, what is happening. So the trees and the air are intimately linked. Without that symbiosis of the trees and the wind, there would be no life on Earth. Because think about the seeds that are blown to different places to make sure that the ecosystems continue to happen. So this T symbol or white wind is the symbol for the breath of life. And that T cross has the dual meaning, a tree and the breath.
Mm.
And the name in Mayan is Ik. And so there is a higher archetype, a galactic archetype to the white wind is the high priestess, which is bringing wisdom and silence. So if you find yourself wanting to go into meditation before you have that conversation, before you write that email, it's a good wave spell to do all of those reflections. It's inviting us to go into the depths of our subconscious mind as well. So all of these wave spell, you could think of going into the mode of high priestess and do yourself, that adventure of self-discovery. It's a very powerful one. And it also helps us understand the interplay of our conscious and subconscious mind. With that high priestess or the lady of the winds, it also invites us to be very present in this huge cosmic transition that we're going through. As I said, we're not going to experience this again in our lives. It's the moment when we need to be paying attention. And if you're going to say something, make sure that you harness the power of the word. What you say, make sure that it's glorious and that it's for the highest good. If not, it's better to keep quiet in silence and bring more of that reflection forward. Yeah. This is also reminding us of that breath of inspiration. So if you get an idea, make sure you journal and talk to the wind and see what energy wants to come through. It's also a very good wave spell if you want to talk to your ancestors, if you have close family that have passed and you want a communication, this is a good wave spell to do so. This energy also represents spontaneity and simplicity. So don't be so much in your head. Bring it to an empty head. You do your reflections, and only when the right words come through, that's when you
like be
use
more
them.
of your original divine mind and less of the matrix logos ego mind.
That's why the
Speak from
work
that
with the
place.
mind was so important in the previous wave spell. Yeah. So a lot to do with presence, being present. Presence is being open, aware, and in the now. And when you are very present and relaxed, then that's when our heart fully opens. And you want to anchor that enlightened timeline for all of us, which is what we're starting to create in this upward spiral. Yeah.
Really beautiful.
These are the questions that you can follow day by day. So the first day, identify your purpose and then see it unfold during the 13 days. We'll go now into the astrology then. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have featured some of these slides a little bit before, but as we've been talking about in probably the last few months and looking at for the last year or more with the switch from the Western tropical astrology to the sidereal, some natural questions have come up. And one of them is, well, how does the switch affect the equinoxes, the solstices, the cross-quarter festivals? Because obviously they all switch because they're based on the house system in the Western tropical. And it's a really good question, and it's one that we've thought about quite a bit. So we've been looking at this particular cross-quarter festival, which traditionally in the Celtic world is called Samhain, and particularly here in North America is called Halloween, but really and truly is the fall harvest, the time really of Ceres, of the goddess of the corn. And so, both being quite connected to that part of the zodiac calendar and time of the year, previously in what we would call the sort of spooky season of Scorpio, now having made that switch and really letting our more Virgo sun natures come through, our true selves, it's become apparent to us that we don't want to celebrate that cross-border festival in the way that certainly I was used to in the Blessed Isles of Britain. It feels inappropriate now to still be doing the underworld spooky stuff, and a lot more appropriate to be calling in the abundance of the goddess of the harvest. So I just wanted to put that out there, Bella, as an initial starting point for a few things that we're going to talk about and to give it some context. But it feels so much more wholesome and uplifting to think of the 31st of October now as the abundance harvest, the harvest moon at this point. And, you know, if you think about the harvest that's available, certainly in the northern hemisphere, it does tend to focus a lot on squashes and pumpkins, which is part of the harvest. And obviously, we can see now with the spooky faces carved into the pumpkins, the inversion that happened here of what should have been a festival for the harvesting of the corn with the goddess.
For all of these topics of
Right,
fertility,
exactly.
of creation, of purification and health, of sacred abundance, because it's the moment that you
Yes.
receive the abundance that will take you through the winter times, for example.
Yes.
The connection to divine justice, because if we think of the energy of the mother goddess is always making sure that everyone has what they need. That's why the energy of Demeter or Ceres, the goddess of wheat, the goddess of nature, felt more appropriate to connect it to this archetype, and including Venus also feels very aligned. And so if you experience this wave spell and the previous sign from September 15th to November 3rd as a whole sign of harvest and medicine, plant medicine, taking responsibility, doing things right, bringing the standards, higher standards to what you do, your daily life, the way you live, the best version of yourself. All of this has to do with this amazing energy of the great goddess, which is the whole constellation of Earth.
Right. So as we've been celebrating, 'tis the season to be thankful. It's the blessed season. It's the fall season. And what I was just going to say about the pumpkins is if we get rid of the use that we've had of them recently and think about what they are, well, these are actually, they're food sources that we can put into our pantry, our larder, and will actually sustain us throughout the whole winter if we've been careful and clever with our harvest. So if we think about it from that point of view in a more agrarian, more back to nature, more integrated, co-creative, co-respective way of being, then wow, what a blessing and harvest abundance the goddess gives us at this time of year so that we can stock our pantries and still have delicious food. Who doesn't like a nice butternut squash soup with a little bit of blue cheese? So, you know, this is just where we get to be creative with the abundance of the goddess. There's also beautiful things like chestnuts come in for roasting. And so it's a whole different food sequence that we can experience and enjoy with the abundance of the goddess. So this is an invitation, everybody, to perhaps, if you haven't already, just shift slightly the appreciation and what you're actually celebrating at this time of year.
And the 260-day cycle is a cycle of the harvest of corn as well. And it's also the gestation of humans, a 9-month process. So we're bringing now the harvest of the humans, the cosmic humans, it feels is what is happening at this moment. And so part of this is all the connection with 3i Atlas, which already happened on the 3rd of October with Mars, on the 29th of October, just yesterday with the Sun, it was a perihelion. And now on the 3rd of November, Venus is going to be conjunct 3i Atlas. And to me, that says that is the final review that brings all of that feminine energy into the table to make sure that there is more balance. Is the feminine harmonic field, is the birthing of a new earth and a new humanity, is the balance of the heart and the mind again. All of this process that we're going through between this wave spell and the one that starts is like going into the balance, and we're going into Earth, into Libra, in the real true constellational astrology. So it's that moment of reconnection, collaboration with Mother Earth and with the universe, getting our heart and mind activated and upgrading our DNA. It's all already started.
So hopefully by now you're starting to get a good inkling of perhaps what we're suggesting here, which is with this 31st of October, what we'd all ordinarily call Samhain, but now the full harvest, we have an incredible resetting. Not even possibility, it's something as we understand it is already underway. And this is very much to do with the new Gaia Grid that's been installed, very much the Virgo motif that we've been talking about, very much to do with Ceres and Venus. And this is very much an energy that quite a few people have been working with probably since at least 2020, if not before, which is now living in a world where we do things from the ground up, from Virgo upwards, with the goddess imbued at the base of everything, rather than the Pluto in Capricorn top-down structure, which we sort of thought we were going through.
Instead of a pyramidal or hierarchical form, we're now going into a circle where we're all included and we're all at the same level. There are no elites that are telling us what to do. We're all deciding and collaborating with each other.
And as we'll see in a minute, Ceres, the goddess of the corn, is actually communicating with Pluto at the beginning of Capricorn, now giving us a different pyramid structure from the bottom up and out like the spiral.
Like a womb.
Like a womb, yeah, and exactly like a womb, an upside down pyramid, yeah.
So there are many comets in the sky, as I was saying, and all of this is the infusion of brand new plasma energy. Some of it is coming from outside our solar system. They are interstellar objects. There have been 3 in the last year. So imagine how much energy we are receiving and how the geometry and the codes are being now downloaded for New Earth. Many of you may have been receiving amazing ideas, and they will become more and more common, I think. The dream space could be quite interesting as well. So with all of this, just to say that Virgo, as we start to move from this space in Virgo into Libra, it feels like what happened with all during this period of Virgo was the divine feminine and the cosmic womb being activated by Atlas. And this is what is going to happen on November the 3rd. Atlas will be conjunct Venus, but look, they're really close to Spica, which we've been saying is an 8th world star, an angelic star, which is in charge of seeing or overseeing the destiny of humanity, making sure that we make it through the upgrades. And this is amazing that is happening right there. Yeah. So we've seen the process of the sun going from September 15 from this area of Virgo. It went all the way through. November the 3rd is the last day of Virgo season, and then we enter Libra on the 4th of November. That's part of what we wanted to show here in the sky. This is Libra, Scorpio, Ophiuchus, and this is the center of the galaxy here.
So, where do you want to start with this piece, Bella?
Right. So part of what we've been seeing is that when we look at the Crew constellation, which is there are 4 pillars, 4 stars of the Crew constellation, and they are connected to the Christ consciousness activation. On the 28th of October, these 2 stars, that was the first activation, Delta Crucis and Gacru. Do you want to talk about these 2 and what happened? We're coming into cosmic cadence, but this is part of the process.
So perhaps also just worth putting into the mix here, if our audience doesn't already know, I'm sure many do, that these 2 particular aspects of this constellation have a particularly personal relevance for us, which is why we sort of know quite a bit about them, because we've been forced to look at them in some detail. So maybe if I speak from the ones that are more active for me, and then you do the other ones, Bella. So on October the 28th, which of course you'll know is my birthday, my solar return, which just happened, there are 2 stars that get activated in the sky. Now, before they were in sort of 4 to 5 degrees of Scorpio, they're now in 42 to 43 degrees of Scorpio. So this applies to anyone who has a very significant placement around there in their charts, particularly if it's the sun, because of the 3i Atlas conjunction with the sun on these days. So to give it a little bit of context. So the 2 that get activated are Delta Crucis and Gacru, and these relate in the stellar nations pathways, has been talked about before, to divine will and divine mercy. So just to give a little bit of explanation, because part of my deep dive into the mind was looking at all of this stuff, and divine mercy is really, really an excellent fail-safe mechanism for us to check in with ourselves to see if we have any polarization. Because divine mercy really asks of you to understand the totality of the experience that we've all had. Let's just call it that. There are many other things we could call it, but the experience of being here in the very dense reality of 3D. Whether we believe it's real or not, we have the perception of existing in this reality, which was part of the experiment in the first place. So within duality, as we've talked about many times before, there is light and dark, good and bad, and all of the other dualistic polarizations. And divine mercy is something that we have been sharing over the last year within our tribe that's very, very useful to stop judgment. Because often when you come into a place of judgment, you're a bad person, you're a good person. Does that factor in the reflection that this mirror wave spell with the moon and everything else has given us? And really, when we come to the place of understanding that even what we would call some of the most monstrous people or beings that we've seen, if you understand that they were also probably incredibly traumatized early in their life, can you blame them for the way they turned out? Well, maybe you don't like necessarily what they did, but it does bring in a sense of compassion, particularly if you cast back in your own mind and you've also had traumas early in your life, which is probably quite a lot of us. So this is where we really get to cultivate compassion for the beings that have suffered with the incredibly difficult, often disgusting things that we perceive that they've done. Many things to live with there. So this is where divine mercy comes in to understand the totality of the dualistic experience that we've had here on planet Earth. Divine will follows on naturally from that, because once you've had the divine mercy in that context, primarily for yourself, actually, you then open the doors to divine will, which is to follow your kind of destiny codes that you came here for. But if you're still harboring dualities and polarizations and judgments, it's going to block that channel, that vertical axis that we were showing there with the fifth element of ether.
Good. So the idea with showing these four pillars of the crew constellation and how they're connected to the Christ consciousness activation is because it feels that we're now coming to a cosmic balance of this energy. And on the 3rd of November, as I mentioned, two other pillars are getting activated. Akru, which is connected to divine love, the energy of Magdalene, and to keep creation united as one. That's why it's been so key to work on our heart. So we come to this moment of activation. And Bekru, which is the other star, is to do with divine law, to keep our connection to source and to align ourselves with what we came to do. There is a bigger plan for the universe. Are you aligned with that plan, or is the free will allowing you to go? It always will allow you to go and do whatever you want. It's not like you have to do something specifically, but what do you want to align yourself with? And this is a big window of opportunity for you to activate those four Christ consciousness stars within you. So the previous two, if you have any planets, are around 42, 43 of Virgo, and then 48 of Virgo is these other two.
And I think it's really beautiful that with the 13 sign constellational sidereal astrology, that these last two stars getting activated in the Southern Cross, the Crew constellation, are at the anaretic degree of this now 48-degree Virgo. So it brings all of these beautiful, like, codes, you can say, of divine love with Magdalene, and the divine law, keeping the connection to source. And here we see a beautiful picture of a male and female serpent in divine union, speaks of many beautiful things from other timelines. But this is also something that we can do within us, right? It's the alchemical union of masculine and feminine within us, which actually is based on these four pillars of the Christic consciousness.
And here on the left, when you look at the sky, look at the sun, what it is on the 3rd of November, is leaving the goddess and then starts the process in Libra, balance masculine and feminine. I think it's so perfect the way that by shifting into true sidereal or constellational astrology, this process is more coherent now. And so we're going into Libra season from the 4th of November up to the 22nd. We'll go more into it probably in the next show. But with this energy, since the wave spell, it's part of this as well, we're reconnecting with divine or cosmic justice. So the process we've been doing with our heart and with our mind is about being able to balance. And math measures the feather versus the heart. How heavy is still your heart? And the feather represents truth, and the heart is how many things do you still have there? Grudges, resentment, victimhood, whatever is weighing your heart down, it's the moment to bring it to a point of light. Balance masculine and feminine energy within yourself and in partnerships. It's a moment to end karma loops, to leave chaos behind, and to welcome more of the harmony, security, and honesty energy that wants to come with Libra, especially equality as well. So, since we are reviewing the planets, the archetypes, and what suits better, I thought of Pallas Athena as a very good representative of this energy because it represents creative intelligence, intuitive strategy, and sacred justice. So, I thought that Pallas Athena here would have a nice residence. Venus would still, because it's like the goddess taking part in the justice process, but Mercury as well, because you need to bring the mind as well into balance. So it's for all of us to have these kind of conversations. What planet do you feel suits better Libra as we are reviewing it at a higher, more 5D perspective?
Yeah, I really think I agree with you on those. So we've got Venus, which would be the original ruler of Libra, but we are
Regional, traditional.
traditional, sorry, yeah, because we don't know what the original is per se, but is the recognized ruler of Libra in Western tropical astrology. Mercury also is,
Because it's air, it's an
yeah.
air element. Shouldn't it have more like a mercurial
So this is
energy?
what I was going to say. It feels much more appropriate, really. I think Pallas Athena is a very good choice for this, and maybe Mercury. Maybe we're going to review all of these so-called rulers of the signs, but with a masculine and a feminine component to it, more recognizable. So it makes more sense that Venus has now
Mhm.
found a more natural home, I think, with her fellow co-ruler of Ceres in Virgo. That seems to make a lot of sense.
So if your birthday is between November the 4th and November 22nd, in true sidereal astrology, you're actually Libra. So are you ready to allow yourself to be reborn into a different energy that is more balanced, for example, than a scorpionic energy? In this case, we had to be reborn into Virgo, going from Scorpio to Virgo. Some of you may be doing this jump from Scorpio to Libra.
So again, we've been talking about this sort of reset of ourselves back from our sort of slightly offset, distorted Western tropical version, all of which was incredibly important and necessary to learn a lot of things. But now, as we make the switch, and as many of you have done like we have and are doing the same thing, we're now finding ourselves essentially rediscovering our original identity, which for many people, because of the size of the Virgo constellation, does mean a switch into Virgo, at least with some aspects, but quite possibly their solar. So this is all part of the reset, but the reset, if you've been paying attention, is with the goddess of the earth, of Gaia, of the natural abundance of the universe, and all of these beautiful aspects that I suspect many of us have been feeling have been quite absent from our world for a while. So all of which will come into play shortly, because I've done a little piece on the movements, Mars's motives and Venus's virtues in this way spell, because they're up to their travels again. But just here is the overall direction of travel for the way spell, with the key dates specifically that are in this way spell. So the big one is November the 5th, the full moon at 11 degrees of Aries in the sidereal. Here on the left, we have the chart for the 1st of November, the first day of this way spell, just to give you some idea. Other significant days, not including the ones we'll look at in a minute. Day 6 for November the 6th, Jupiter in Gemini trines Black Moon, Lilith in Libra. That feels like it could be quite important and significant. Day 9, Mercury goes retrograde in Scorpio, as already mentioned, which is on day 9 of this way spell. So it feels like that's the moment for all of the things that we've been reviewing with the air elemental, with communication, to come to the sort of pointy end, to make our solar intentions. And then Mercury says, job well done. I'm going to put my feet up for it a bit and go back to the beach or something like that, whatever he's got planned. And then day 11, November the 11th, also quite significant. Jupiter goes retro. So Jupiter, the planet of expansion, will be taking us to that maximum point on the 11th before then going to a bit of a review process for a while. So that also seems very significant. Veterans Day, of course, here in North America. So there's also perhaps some relevance there. But that's the overall trajectory. Anything jump out off the bat, Bella?
I'm looking at the geometry of it, and I see lots of a big trine between Black Moon Lilith, Jupiter, and Saturn. And it looks like a very important, also a kite
Yeah.
that goes in the back with here, let's point this. We have here Pluto at the 0 degree of Capricorn, and we're starting to see what is happening with the governments shut down, with conversations between big governments, making big changes in the background. If you're not aware of that, there are many systems that are going to change within the next few days and weeks, and you'll get to see more. They're already happening in the background, politically, financially, medical, in every single area. So I see that what Pluto's doing there is showing us like the energy. If we pull it back, then the arrow goes forward towards expansion and information, higher mind, and new things, I think, that are going to come our way for all of us.
Right, and as I mentioned already, and just looking at the chart here, we can see, and it gets a little tighter, that Pluto and Ceres are in a sextile, which is a nice combo. And Pluto is also in a sextile with, I think, Mercury. So there's some interesting play there with the communication, with the energy of the goddess, and Pluto saying, hey, we've kind of done the extent of all of the things that needed looking at. We sort of did the illusory pre-run of Pluto and Capricorn to get us ready, so that now that we can really do it and understand all of the things that we were actually looking at that needed fixing, we've done that process over the last 5 years, especially. I would say we've had a really good look at top-down pyramid structures, and now we're going to flip it and we're going to do it the other way. And that's kind of also, at least visually speaking, somewhat to me, Bella, like the pyramid being turned upside down and the spiral going up and out, expanding like that, rather than going down and in, which is kind of like what we've been experiencing in some way. So
I'm seeing here this sextile between Venus and Vesta, which talks to me about the high priestess energy we were talking about, with Venus in Virgo and Vesta in Ophiuchus, which is in the center of the galaxy. So to me, that absolutely represents what we were talking about, reconnecting with that high priestess part of ourselves in this very moment of the cosmic rebirth for all of us.
yes, indeed. And we always use quite tight orbs on this. I think normally we only factor up to 2 or 3.
Max, yeah.
So it's not featured here, but again, with a slightly wider orb, we can see that Uranus here is at the head of a yod with that sextile with Vesta and Venus. And so we now we talked about yods last time out, so we can see here on the opposite side that Uranus would be at the pointy end of that with the base here. So the orb must be probably more than a couple of degrees, but it's certainly in play. The energies are there. And of course, this is all facing off against that kind of strong array of energies there that we can see.
Which would be the energy of the high priestess, bringing it to the earth with big changes, innovations, and technology that will change the earth and the way we do things. Big changes in the financial system for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So interesting stuff. A few other things to contemplate on there. Please do take a snapshot and get yourself familiar with all of that. We're going to look at some of these now in a bit more detail. So I've used the full moon here as a sort of the fulcrum because many of these are in play around this, but I'll just quickly pick out the key points of these two sets, because they're somewhat what we've been talking about, the balance of the masculine and feminine, which is why when these movements caught my eye, I thought we'd just have a look at them briefly. It's not so much into the detail. So Mars trines Neptune. And we could say that that's really about flowing with natural inspired action and compassionate energy, which kind of is a nice start to this, particularly on the day of service. The electric tone could also perhaps see an enhancement to our artistic and spiritual intuitions or initiations, which would also inspirations, exactly. Yeah. And it feels like it could be more of a harmonious integration of that drive that we get with Mars, but with more of the imaginative flow of Neptune. And so that's a really beautiful way to think about day 3.
Use the energy, the masculine energy in an inspirational way, with giving us the motivation to move towards our inspirations.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, it's on the day of service, so we can really get creative of how perhaps that can be put into the grid for the collective. So then we move to what seems like potentially more of a tricky one, which is Mars opposing Uranus, which you can maybe point out there somewhere on the chart. There's Mars and there's Uranus on the opposite side. And this is, we can say, a tension point between stable and unstable, disruptive energy. It could also be about assertion, from one source of energy over another, which could, of course, be state versus the people, rebellion versus the structure. So you can look at it in lots of different ways. But whenever traditionally we've looked at Mars, it has some of that energy. Now we're in a different octave since the convergence, and we're re-reviewing all of the signatures of all of the planets. So we are now saying that no longer is Mars the god of destruction, but the god of protection. And so we can look at it through these sort of new filters, which keeps it on the higher octave. So in that case, Mars can emphasize to us the awareness of erratic impulses, maybe the mind playing up again and reacting too quickly without divine mind, original mind, giving a little bit of a steadying hand and saying, let's have another look at that. And of course, Mars can often lead to sudden aggression, particularly if something in your field is getting triggered, perhaps by the mind. So we can see how all of this comes into play. It also encourages a balance between sort of conscious and revolutionary driven ambition. So just to keep all of that in mind. Day 6, this is a nice one, Bella. Mars sextiles Pluto and offers opportunities for powerful action and unified drive with what we're doing. So a way of unifying the energies with all of the wisdom that Pluto brings us. And it also emphasizes the potential for deep courage with regenerative energy. So I think this is a moment where we have the self-existing tone at play. Mars is opposing Uranus, and on day 6, we're bringing it into balance with Pluto, with the masculine, feminine energies, and just being super mindful at the whole time of Mars's tendency to overact in the moment and just take that extra breath from spirit and go, do I need to speak now, or do I just need to let this one settle, reassess it, and come at it again when the energy is more conducive to a positive outcome?
What I'm feeling also with this astrology for this wave spell is a point of reset. We've talked about how things are already happening in the background, but I think there is a reset moment where we all feel it and we start to see it. So the reset of the timelines already happened on the 14th of October. But the reset of the systems and the grids is what I feel could happen within this wave spell.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the few more things we're going to look at will kind of confirm that. So finally, with Mars, he conjuncts Mercury on day 12, which is a day of cooperation. Of course, the tone of crystal, the crystal tone of cooperation. And so this is really about emphasizing direct communications, perhaps with some quick wit, or maybe with some of that fortitude we've picked up along the way, which is necessary with Mars, but also encourages decision or decisive thinking and confident verbal expression. So really and truly, if we think about that Mars conjuncting with Mercury, it's like, have you learnt the lessons of the wave spell? So that's one way of looking at it. And then on the other side, if we're looking at Mars's motifs, then we look at Venus's virtue. So on day 2, which is kind of a tough day, you pulled it out earlier, it's the lunar tone. I think it was the blue hand, was it, on that day in the wave spell? I can't remember now. But so we have Venus in Virgo squaring Jupiter in, I've forgot to put it here, it's come off. Jupiter is in
Gemini.
In Gemini, in the latter degrees of Gemini. We think about this is a kind of a friction between harmony and excess, right? So it's really, really important, learning how to bring things back into balance. It will encourage growth through balancing pleasure and realistic love. So yes, more of that masculine, feminine harmony with those images as an inspirational carrot to direct our energies and thoughts towards if we want to be in balanced partnerships and relationships. There is a little disclaimer to this, because on the same day, Venus opposes Chiron, which is really where all of these tests are going to come up. So I think that's kind of an interesting day. And then on day 7, Venus is squaring Pluto, which would perhaps suggest potentiality for intense friction between power and love, but can also encourage growth through conscious relational empowerment.
And transformation.
So really, from what I'm getting, Bella, just from these 2 particular planets that we often think of as masculine and feminine, is that Mars has still got his energy. He wants to pump things, wants to make things happen, but is learning that in order to do so effectively, he needs to have a listen to the Queen and put things into play. And in order for her to be on her best form, she needs to make sure that the container, that Mars has set up as a protective container for those wonderful goddess energies of abundance, of inspiration, of creativity, they come in without having any sense of wounding, perhaps, through that Chiron opposition. Is there still some of the old yucky stuff from PTSD, trauma imprints from the past? Are they going to affect that beautiful divine flow?
But look, everything you're talking about here is also coming to that point of balance. After the Christ consciousness came to the point of activation, then this moment of balance, entering Libra, is absolutely perfect. The sun at 0 degrees of Libra, as the full moon is here, 11 of Aries, is powerful.
So that's it.
The new beginning.
Absolutely got it. That's why these two movements appealed to me. I think it's pretty clear so we've been given a list of what still need to check in on to see whether it's bringing up any divisive, explosive, bad words, bad thoughts, bad directions of energies, etc., and making sure that we're taking responsibility.
And mind the words that we use is what it's saying with the white wind energy.
Yes. So I just included this slide here because
this is Western, by the way.
Western, exactly. And the reason we include this because it's still this particular software allows us to look at all of the asteroids that we've been working with over the course of this year, and perhaps many people don't always work with. Particularly, we have Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, which we featured in the last episode, and still is having a conversation here with the sun. They move at a relatively similar pace, so that conversation will be ongoing probably for a few more weeks.
So 4 degrees from the sun, it would be here at the last degrees of Virgo for Quetzalcoatl.
Right, yeah, exactly. So we have that. We also see here, of course, that Mars and Mercury are still having a sort of wide conversation that comes more close as the Wavespell goes on. And that will then catch up with Hidalgo, the warrior priest, Juno, the asteroid of commitment, and we can say fidelity in relationships, which then bleeds into Atlantis. So I definitely think there's some sort of trigger stellium going on there, all of which is kind of happening in Scorpio now, right?
No, all of these would be Libra now.
Libra?
Yeah, because they're here in Scorpio, so they would be happening here. Libra.
So Mercury's in Scorpio right now, so it goes retro at the end. So some of them are in the end degrees of Libra, and so Mars is still in Libra in the 13 sign, and Mercury's already in Scorpio, and so is Juno. Yeah, and so I think it's Hidalgo. So we can see this is why we put these charts so that we can just backtrack to see where the asteroids are. So that's a very interesting kind of spread there. If we take it all, Bella, as a trigger stellium from Mars through Mercury through Hidalgo, the warrior priest, with the goddess on his banner, our Virgin of Guadalupe, and then we have Juno, which is all about the solidity of commitment in relationships and what keeps the container solid. And then we have Atlantis, maybe as the prize, the original blueprint that can be downloaded now without all of these potential booby traps that were there in the past, shall we say. So, yeah.
One last thing I wanted to mention here about the astrology is a reminder that the astrology of this moment is very similar to 250 years ago, 1776, when there was a whole new republic created. So Pluto was there, Uranus was in similar position, same sign, same as Jupiter. So there were many coincidences or synchronicities at this moment when we feel some new republic or a new world is about to be birthed, and that's what there's where we're paying attention.
And also, just if you go back there, sorry a second, we do use tight orbs on the aspects here, and you can still see that it's a very, very busy pattern, a little bit like a spider's web, you could say.
Right.
So
I wanted to show here the sky in Stellarium. That is the app that we use here, the software. And you can see that the moon is in Aries. We can see here the sidereal astrology. So if you look for the moon, is 11 degrees of Aries. You can see it in the sky. That's exactly what it is. And that's what we want to start doing more and more, that people pay attention to the sky or their telescopes or these apps, whatever you want to use, but reconnect to the true constellational astrology. And if you want to use this software, it's from Mastering the Zodiac. He has a software called True Sky. You can access it there if you're interested. One more thing I wanted to show here is you see here the ram. Here is the sea monster or Cetus, and this is Taurus. I wanted to show Menkar, which is a very important star at the mouth of Cetus and is the point of celestial judgment, galactic council gathering, galactic law, and the return to integrity and honesty. And I think is so appropriate for this moment when we have 3i Atlas and the other comets all around us, bringing new codes. We're at the moment of rebalancing. We're coming into Libra, the point of balance of masculine and feminine, and everything that has happened in the past. We have done the convergence of timelines. It's like we're building and starting to create that big new spiral of what we're going. So this Cetus constellation is connected to the whales. If you're connected to the whales, it's a good point to invite them because they work with the morphogenetic fields and they can help us repattern the whole grid that we are trying to create, where there is more forgiveness, there's more harmony, where we balance the harmonics of the planet. A harmonic resonance is how we started this show and is where we want to start wrapping it up. A harmonic resonance within ourselves and with the planet is what we, even with the cosmos, is what we want to do. So here is the moon. Menkar is here, and this is the Pleiades, and here we have Orion. It's like to start getting more familiar with it.
All right.
Cool. This is also happening on the 5th of November with the full moon. This is all the amount of comets I was telling you about. So look at Atlas is going to be very close to Venus. The closest conjunction is on the 3rd of November, but on the 5th, they are still very close. We have T1 Atlas, K1 Atlas, Swan, really close to us, really close to Earth. So not too many people are talking about it, but I think Swan is also delivering many codes for us. And Lemon, look at what it is, really close to Mercury and the Sun as well. If you want to use this software as well, it's called the skylive.com, and you can see all of these different diagrams and change the dates and that. Anything else that comes to you?
No, I'm just going to bring the last few slides into the place and wrap up with all of this because it's all interconnected.
So what I wanted to show with this slide is how it is a moment of cosmic seeding. We know that it's the year of the seeds. We know that we're becoming cosmic humans, and it feels like all of the codes are being received right now. And the work that we've been doing is now when we start receiving, because we prepare ourselves, our bodies, our mind, our hearts, and now the upgrade of the DNA can start to happen.
So to round this out, and you'll see where these threads go, I'm just going to bring in a couple of threads. First of all, one of them will be the tree of this wavespell, which I'll share in a minute. But November the 5th is traditionally known as Guy Fawkes Day or fireworks, bonfire night for many different reasons. But I'm going to hopefully do a slightly longer 15, 20...
England.
In England only, yes. This is very British centric, and I do plan on doing a 15-20 minute deep dive for this for our channel in the next few days. But essentially, on November the 5th, 1605, a man called Guido Fawkes led an attempt to blow up the English Houses of Parliament, aka the Gunpowder Plot. I'm just giving some basic coordinates. That day in 1605 was akin 66, a white magnetic world bridger. November the 5th, 2025 is both a full moon and a kin 226, the white overtone world bridger. So these are just some of the things that caught my eye. The Gregorian calendar had been set in motion in October of 1582 with those 10 missing days as we've talked about. This was just 23 years later. So it's quite possible that Guido Fawkes was living in the reality that was created with whatever happened in those 10 days. And his whole plot basically was to blow up the Houses of Parliament, which do sit on a very, very powerful nodal point, hence how the British Empire managed to control so many things for so long. And along with some fellow chums, this is a very short version, which I will expand on in hopefully the longer video. He attempted to blow up the Houses of Parliament, essentially to gain freedom from the oppressive rule that him and his fellows perceived that government at the time was involved in, all of which you could loop forward basically sort of 500 years and a bit more and feel essentially much the same. So the point being here is that when we're talking about nodal points within the grid, we're talking about places that can hold and channel great power and energy, sometimes for good and sometimes for bad. And A lot of the war for planet Earth over the various different epochs has been for control of the grid, the natural Gaia grid, or in more recent times, the overlay of what we now call the matrix, the arthropodic technocrat grid, etc., etc. But it's gone through various iterations. And this has piqued my interest with this particular link with the world bridge. It's almost like a world was attempted to be bridged back then with the magnetic tone, and perhaps now is coming to an overtone place for it to finally come into some sort of radiance out from the original plan. In the world of the stellar nations, as Bella was just talking about with the whales, the great felines represent nodal points and how to access, we can say, stargates and wormholes and time travel. And in that pathway, the dragons represent the telluric currents, all of which is a bit like the particle and the wave, or the nodal points and the fronds of a spider's web. So this is a way of looking at time and looking at various things that have occurred and understanding that there's also a loop, particularly to this wavespell, where sovereignty, which is what this whole piece in November the 5th, 1605 was really, really all about. And I find it fascinating that it's come up again in this moment when sovereignty is very much in the energetic grid of the planet and has been set as a resetting moment. So I find that could be interesting that something could happen. So the only thing to round out with, and I put these pictures here, is the world tree, which many of you will know is sort of Yggdrasil, or the more familiar Celtic world tree. We have, I think it's from Manly P. Hall's book there, the picture of Yggdrasil, which is kind of accurate as a map with the Rainbow Bridge. And many of you will be familiar with the fact that we have worked with these different blueprints for a while with different trees, the ash, the oak, and the yew. So at the risk of introducing an old friend again, the oak always has something to say, and he just wanted to remind us to share with you that this self-regenerating toroidal field that is the energy field of the oak is synonymous with the nodal points on the grid. We are also mobile nodal points. So oak trees often anchor significant places in the Gaia grid. There's a lot to say about the oak. We said a lot of it before, so I'm not going to repeat. But the oak really brings in the essence of longevity. They live up to 1,000 years in linear time. They bring through a lot of wisdom because of the things that they've seen and experienced, and many other things too. And they also carry that sense of kingship and nobility. Again, the harmonizing of the masculine principles with the feminine, with nature. So working in accordance with the goddess in the grid. The oak really reminds us, as above, so below, the tree of the three doors, above the middle world and the lower world. Now, the underworld has been somewhat in place with the lower world, but that's now been cleaned up. And as we come out of this convergence, we understand the frequencies of the lower world are basically coming, or have come to an event horizon, and are being transformed literally as we're recording this. Some of you can feel it. But also now we're looking for the as within, the so without, which is what many of us hold internally as our visions of new earth that we've constructed in our awareness with our higher dimensional consciousness. It's no good it just being on the inside. We want to experience that as a reality that we're living in, not this sort of distorted version that has come from the matrix. So the key here is to be like the oak. And I was making notes, Bella, when you were just talking about the T-shaped element from the Mayan sites and the tree of life and the breath of life. Well, when you're connecting with the wind and the air elementals, for me, the best thing to do is go and sit probably under an oak tree and ask the wind to share with you whatever it's on its mind. And you will be amazed at how the wind will change very, very quickly into all kinds of different energies and powers and whispers and shouts and roars and all kinds, right? That's the wind talking to you, the air dragons. This is a way to practice communicating with the elementals. Interestingly, the Druids venerated the oak, and they were a solar order. They were something that came from the sun, a very yang external manifestation of the more yin, we can say, Lemurian world that had previously passed. The oaks and the Druids are very connected to some elements of Atlantis. And finally, our good friend Dandelion also wanted to get in on the act and just remind us that along with the oak, they are both very solar. We've often said that Dandelion is very much our connection to the solar consciousness, and we work with that, but they're also very connected to time, both in the smaller Dandelion to the personal, and the oak to the more interpersonal, galactic or cosmic, all of which is very, very important for all the things we've just talked about, and it's sort of a way of bringing it all to conclusion. So I would say, Bella, that we're looking here with this wavespell at very much the implementation, solidifying of the nodal points of the grid, working with the goddess, working with the harvest, working with the oak, working with the breath of spirit to bring all of these things into our awareness, so that the as within, so without starts to come actually into our visual field.
And both the oak and dandelion have been the main guides when it comes to great deal of the mission that we've had with QPW and before, which is the repairing the heart of time, repairing timelines, repairing the grid, bringing everything into a point of harmonic resonance. And a lot of this has to do with harmony and rhythm. We need to make sure that we're resonating at the right rhythm with the pulse of the earth, with the pulse of the cosmos. That's why the frequency of 1320 was so important. And 13, when it comes to 13 moons, 13 sign astrology, 13 stellar nations, everything we've been doing is to align ourselves with the natural cycles. And the oak and dandelion have been amazing guides helping us do all of this.
Absolutely. And so perhaps as a final, I think that's it for the slides. Yes. As a final thought, perhaps to bring this to a place of conclusion, is now it seems, Bella, that the opportunity has come. We've accepted it to install the original blueprint template, the original Gaia grid. In order to get to that opportunity, we had to clear out the remnants of the matrix, both in the grid of Gaia herself, which of course we're also very much the children of Gaia. So whatever was installed in the grid, sorry to say, was also installed in us as this kind of faulty mind technology. So definitely recommend doing the observer and the observed meditation a few times to see whether your higher mind needs to communicate something to you about your lower mind or something like that. Play with it, do the internal investigation, and do the observer and the observed with your divine mind and your logos mind, just to see if anything needs releasing in that way. And as you do so, the possibility then comes online of this clear channel opening up to receive whatever codes the Atlas, the Lemon, the Swan are transmitting. They for sure are transmitting codes to all of us. And I think the key here is to make sure that the vessel is ready to receive. Now, the codes will be received into the vessel whether you're conscious of them or not. But then if you clean the field, then like say a Buddhist transmission from a Lama, the code starts to open up a bit like a termite into an energetic data package that then informs the rest of your field with that activation, which I think everybody is pretty darn cool. And certainly I think a good carrot to dangle at the end of the stick for ourselves to do that little bit of final inner work to make sure that we're in a place of balance and harmony.
So that's it from us. It's a big moment, a moment of rebalancing, a moment to keep it empty, which is my mantra. Just go into reflection and be ready to receive, because it seems like it's a reset moment. If there is anything you want to rebalance, follow the wave spell, do some journaling, think about what you're going to say before you say it, and just be present. That's it.
Alrighty. In Lakesh, I am another
Lakesh.
year. See you all next time. Bye for now.